Ron DeSantis, Governor DeSantis in Florida. You know, it's incredible to me because you have the free speech absolutists. You know, Glenn Greenwald says he's a free speech absolutist, and he's, always ranting about Democratic Party censorship, which, he should be. Democratic Party is trying to censor. Other pseudo-leftists are ranting that the Republican Party is now the party of free speech. I've heard that from Jimmy Dore, among others. They seem kind of silent on the fact that Governor Ron DeSantis, infamous now for the Don't Say Gay bill, the Stop Woke Act in Florida, he has now created a law to ban protesting in front of people's homes. Colin, if you have this from The Guardian, Florida signs bill into law banning protests outside homes. Protests outside homes are now banned in Florida after the state's right-wing Republican governor, Ron DeSantis, signed a bill into law prohibiting such demonstrations. DeSantis is both an ally and potential 2024 rival to Trump, is a rising star in Republican circles as he courts the party's right-wing base. A prepared statement from DeSantis on the bill signing on Monday cited liberal picketing outside the homes of conservative U.S. Supreme Court justices following the leak on May 2nd of the coming overturning of Roe v. Wade. The protests outside justices' homes generally have been peaceful and within bounds of U.S. Constitution's First Amendment, which guarantees citizens the right to freely express themselves and assemble peacefully. Nonetheless, DeSantis' statement labeled those protesting for the protection of abortion rights as, quote, unruly mobs. Quote, sending unruly mobs to private residences like we have seen with the angry crowds in front of the homes of Supreme Court justices is inappropriate. This bill would provide protection to those living in residential communities, and I'm glad to sign it into law. Florida's ban on so-called residential picketing won passage in the state's House of Representatives and the Senate by vote of 76-41 and 28-3, respectively. It would call for it would go into effect in October and calls for those found guilty of breaking the law to face up to 60 days in jail, as well as a maximum fine of $500. Yeah, let me tell you something. If I want a free speech hero, the Trump mini-me is who I'm going to go to. I got to tell you something, and I addressed it yesterday with Glenn Greenwald's insane defense of Tucker Carlson, which was pathetic, and we've lost subscribers over it, but I don't really give a damn. It's really becoming a five alarm fire trend where leftists, all because I guess it's to them, you could only bash the Democratic Party and everything you cover should be the corruption of the Democratic Party. And no matter what, you need to tie everything to the corruption of the Democratic Party. Then you have leftists who are propping up Marjorie Taylor Greene because Jimmy, too, he did a live stream on this because she did a speech on the House floor against sending more money to Ukraine. They kind of left out the fact that literally Marjorie Taylor Greene invested in Lockheed Martin a day before in March, a day before ranting against a profitable war in Russia and Ukraine. Let me repeat, the Republican that Jimmy and others have been propping up recently as, oh my God, the Democratic Party has been out-lefted by Marjorie Taylor Greene, literally invested in Lockheed Martin at the beginning of the Russia-Ukraine war, and then a day before smashing this profitable war. Yeah, but let's prop up Marjorie Taylor Greene and Greenwald and Dore and all these people. Oh, the Democratic Party is the enemy of free speech. Democratic Party is the party of censorship. I guess they kind of didn't look at the law Ron DeSantis pushed to make it literally legal for Floridians to run over protesters in Florida. Man, that's the kind of free speech I love. Ron DeSantis has pushed the law in Florida to make it legal for Floridians to run over protesters they don't like in Florida. Republicans have done that in other states too. Ron DeSantis, Colin, if you have this too, Ron DeSantis has literally just created an election police unit. DeSantis signs bill creating one of the nation's only election police units. You know who have election police units? Mexican drug cartels and Mexico's presidents. They put out election police to intimidate voters. Ron DeSantis, to fight voter fraud and keep election integrity, has an election police unit. And now banning protesting in residential areas. So I guess, in a sense, DeSantis is banning protesting outside his house, or Marco Rubio's house, or Governor Rick Scott's house, or, I don't know, if one of these Democrats win, Debbie Wasserman Schultz's home. Can't protest outside Debbie Wasserman Schultz's home. I'm sure she's in a nice gated community, according to Ron DeSantis. These are the free speech heroes.
And so now look, and now they give a right winger like DeSantis, who should be repulsive to people who are on the left. Now they make him attractive. And how are they doing it? Watch, here's what he says.
But clearly, our entire principles that the country was founded on, you cannot have a ministry of truth in this country. And so let's get real here. Let's make sure that we're doing things to benefit Floridians and Americans, but we're not going to let Biden get away with this one. So we'll be fighting back.
The Democrats are losing everybody who's gives a lick about liberty, freedom, it's civil rights. They're losing everybody. They tried to paint Trump, remember, during Black Lives Matter, that Trump was a crazy authoritarian who's going to send the army into the city. Well, now Joe Biden is doing worse. And so they're making guys like that look attractive.
Colin, could you come back? Am I crazy, Colin? Am I crazy, or are there 24 hours in a day? Are there 24 hours in a day?
Most of the time, technically. Leap years might get weird.
So if you are a big YouTube host or tweeter or Substack person, if there's 24 hours in a day, is there theoretically enough hours to call out Democratic censors, the Democratic Party trying to censor free speech, the Democratic Party warmongering, the Democratic Party, basically trying to do away with critics, the Democratic Party creating this position, the Ministry of Truth. Is there enough hours in the day to call out that if you're a free speech absolutist, while also challenging Governor DeSantis, who, by the way, I didn't even mention, throws out journalists out of press conferences, routinely throws out journalists out of press conferences before they could even challenge him? Is there enough time in the day to do both, where you could criticize both and not pretend that one is so much worse than the other, and kind of just by silence and not covering Ron DeSantis's fascism and censorship, make it seem like Republicans are the party of free speech? Is there enough time to do both?
I would assume so by the amount of stuff. It's the thing you mention all the time, where at some point people forgot that while they're walking, they're also able to chew gum. It's not even that complicated of a task, but being able that somehow eludes people the ability to acknowledge two things at once, which is both of them are terrible, and what you're seeing now, running to the other one in protest of the other, just exposes, hey, they're
But interestingly enough, free speech absolutist Glenn Greenwald, Jimmy Dore, a lot of other channels that kiss off their ass and essentially just kiss their ring and defend them. And they've been, all these channels, focusing on the Democratic Party is the party of censorship and free speech, anti-free speech. I'm very much waiting for their coverage of Ron DeSantis banning protests in residential areas, or Ron DeSantis election police. I must have been sleeping through their coverage of Ron DeSantis pushing a law to make it legal to run over protesters. See, that's my problem with all this, Jimmy and the rest of them. There doesn't seem to be any consistent principles here, right? There doesn't seem to be any core consistent principles. There seems to be a laser focus on one party, I guess, under the guise of, well, why bother focusing on the Republican Party? Everybody knows that. So so if everybody knew Hitler was bad, should we not focus on Hitler being a brutal psychopath because everybody knew it? Yeah, everybody knows a lot of things. That doesn't make it okay to ignore it. It doesn't make it okay because there's a lot of people who watch these channels who don't know any better, not because they're dumb, but because, you know, we're working multiple jobs. Our information comes from YouTube hosts who actually, by the laser 99% focus on, the Democratic Party is this, the Democratic Party is that, the Democratic Party is this. They actually think Ron DeSantis is for free speech. They actually think that Republicans are less censorious. It just came out in leaked tapes with Kevin McCarthy, the leader of the House GOP, that after January 6th, he was on phone calls saying, how do we get these pro-Trump Republicans who were defending him, how do we get them removed from Twitter? Meanwhile, Kevin McCarthy, the same one that in private was saying, hey, how do we get these Republicans removed from Twitter? He's ranting about Democrats being the party of censorship. And to be clear, this is not a defense of the Democrats. They are totally wanting to silence their enemies. Silicon Valley is basically a revolving door of the Democratic Party. Executives at Twitter have worked for the DCCC. One of the executives at Twitter in communications was a Kamala Harris aide. Facebook is run by a lot of Democrats. Obviously, Biden is running this Ministry of Truth position, which really has striking similarities to like the Committee on American Activities back in the day. So, Democratic Party, they're absolutely right. Glenn, Jimmy, they're absolutely right. Democratic Party seems to be very gung-ho about censorship. The problem is when, you know, blinders, earmuffs on fascist, white supremacists, autocrat Republicans. I truly cannot believe that somebody would call themselves free speech absolutists, right? That people would call themselves free speech absolutists, anti-censorship in all cases, yet don't think it's a big enough story to cover or tweet about, that the governor of Florida, who other than Trump might be the Republican nominee, might be president one day, has literally just pushed a law to ban protest outside politicians' homes, basically. Never seemed to cover the fact that he was pushing a law to make allow drivers to run over protesters in Florida. They clearly they did not cover at all the Don't Say Gay bill that they normalized. You have to start wondering why. Could it be that a lot of their audience is right-wingers and they've gravitated to building an audience of right-wingers? I don't know. When I look at channels like Jimmy's and others, most of the videos aren't on left things. For a while, he was doing 20, 30 videos on COVID a week, pushing out a lot of non-factual bullshit. I think I saw one video like on forced to vote. When I was out there covering the John Deere strikes, hospital workers striking, Starbucks workers trying to organize a union, Amazon workers trying to organize a union for a year, I didn't see those videos on channels like Jimmy. And this isn't just about Jimmy. There's a whole lot of others just like him. They are the real leftists. People like me were shit libs. Yeah. They're the real leftists, ignoring this from Ron DeSantis. They're the real leftists, ignoring Tucker Carlson's white replacement insanity. If those are the real leftists you want to follow, have a ball. Because you're following them to the right. And by the way, Jimmy, a clip came out earlier today. Jimmy saying that if you're the anti-war person, you should have voted for Trump and the Republicans.
So what were they really afraid of with Trump? They were afraid he wouldn't do this. That's what they were afraid of. They were afraid he wouldn't go along with them because he didn't come up in the Republican farm team. He didn't come up in the organization. He didn't have groomers, Trump. Trump didn't have donors for his whole life like everybody else. He was a donor. So he didn't owe favors like everybody else. They couldn't control him like they could control everybody. So what they did was they concocted Russiagate, red baited him for 4 straight years, and impeached him twice because he didn't have his mind right. So if you were the anti-war person, you should have voted for Trump and the Republicans. That's what this means. If you're pro-war, you vote for Joe Biden and the Democrats.
I was trying to save abortion. That's why I voted for Biden.
So we can't just criticize and condemn Biden sending troops into Somalia, which he should absolutely be criticized for. There's no reason in the world we should be sending troops to Somalia. But yeah, we should then say, hey, if you're anti-war, you should have voted for the Republicans and Trump. Yeah, that anti-war Trump, who armed Ukraine, who dropped bombs on Syria, who, by the way, increased troops in Iraq and Afghanistan and Syria, by the way, who increased troops and funding to NATO, who attempted a failed coup to oust Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, who assassinated Iran's General Commander Soleimani, who, it just came out, was asking his defense secretary if we could bomb Mexico, who vetoed a bipartisan resolution to end the U.S. involvement in Saudi Arabia's genocide on Yemen. Yeah, that anti-war Trump and Republican Party. By the way, the same Republican Party that's been pushing for war against Iran since I've been alive. This is really the toxicity that's been going on for a while now with people I used to respect that are wink, 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 wink. No. I'm not for Trump. I'm not for the Republicans. Wink, wink. Let me just talk about the Democrats 100% of the time and ignore and recharacterize the Republican Party as anti-war and free speech. By the way, Trump armed Ukraine. To those who said today, if Trump was president, we wouldn't be in this situation. Yeah. So let me get something straight here. Trump, who has bowed down to Putin for many years, not because there was collusion. I've been saying bullshit on Russiagate forever, but for more simple reasons, which anyone with a brain knew, because Trump's biggest real estate customer is Russian oligarchs. Anybody in New York knows that. That's why Trump was playing footsie with Putin as president and before he became president, because his biggest customers in real estate are Russia. And because Trump had ties to the mob, which also had ties to Russian oligarchs. So let me get something straight. Trump, if Russia and Putin wanted to invade Ukraine, which why would Putin not want to invade Ukraine? Because Trump was still president. Again, Trump, as president, gave more money and troops to NATO countries. Let me repeat. Trump, as president, gave more money and troops to NATO countries. Trump, as president, increased troops in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Syria. Not exactly like what Russia would want, particularly on NATO. But Trump would somehow stop Russia from invading Ukraine. Trump somehow would try to negotiate it quickly with Russia when he basically does whatever Russia wants, not because he's in collusion with Russia, but because it's in his financial business interests. He would fight Putin on this? Thanks for watching, and make sure to tune in to Status Coup's daily live stream Monday through Thursday at 5 o'clock Eastern Time and Fridays at 4 o'clock Eastern Time.